All right, guys, in this one, I want to go over something a lot of you have all been requesting, and that is an updated Stasis build. Now, particularly, this build is based all around the Stasis turret. If you want to see another Stasis build that's involved all around Mantle of Battle Harmony, I will link that in the top right now. So be sure to go over and check that out. But this build is definitely catered more towards in-game and being able to have one of the best crowd control builds in the entirety of Destiny 2. So just jump right into it. We have our Warlock right here, and our exotic we're going to be running is the Osmiomancy Gloves. This has the exotic perk, Cold Snap. Your Cold Snap grenades have an additional charge that recharges quicker on direct impact. The seekers spawn from a Cold Snap grenade to travel further. So this has a very cool exotic perk that you can kind of take advantage of in two ways. Not only is the Cold Snap grenade very good, and when it sits on direct impact, if you actually throw the grenade and hit an enemy, then the Cold Snap will spawn its little ice bolts to go out and freeze enemies. In both of those instances where the Cold Snap hits an enemy and then the freeze also freezes enemy, you will get chargeback for both of those. So that means you can just spam your Cold Snap grenades and freeze entire battlefields, and it is very, very strong. Now, the other main part of this is the fact that you just get two Cold Snap grenades, which means you can have two Bleak Watcher turrets up at all times. We all know the Bleak Watcher turret is insanely good for in-game content, for just slowing enemies down and just making the battlefield a whole lot easier to manage. And even with all the 3.0 updates being out for every subclass now, I still think this is one of the strongest in-game builds for a Warlock. Now, having two grenades are great with the Osmiomancy Gloves, but you already know later in the video, we're going to be going over some mods that lets you have 4 or 5 turrets up at all times and the ability to never have a grenade cooldown if you are just throwing the grenade. Now, this is typically where I would go into my weapons of choice, but I'm actually going to save this for later because I need to go over some mods first. We will jump into our Stasis subclass right here. So we're obviously going to be using the Bleak Watch turret, so we can hold our grenade down, throw it. We spawn a little turret that can shoot enemies, freeze them, do a little bit of damage. It's very, very good. And then we're also going to be running Glacier Harvest, so every time you freeze a target, we're going to be spawning Stasis shards. These shards will actually give you melee energy on top of playing into some of our other mods that we'll get into in a second. Now, I'm also going to be running Whisper of Fissure, so increase the damage and size of the burst of stasis when you destroy a stasis crystal or defeat a frozen target. So this is going to be very good for at clear this build. Your stasis turret's going to be freezing literally everything. You're going to be blowing up those frozen targets, which will then obviously blow up the other targets that are frozen, and it's just a chain reaction. It is very, very strong. Now, I'm also going to be running Whisper of Endurance, so slow for my abilities last longer. Then for those abilities that linger, the duration will also increase. So this also gives plus 10 strength. So this basically makes my stasis turret slow faster, and it also gives it an additional couple seconds of lasting, which is really, really cool. So when you throw it, I think it provides around 4 or 5 seconds extra of it, staying alive, which is obviously a pretty good amount of time for just taking one fragment, and it'll help you out in in-game scenarios a lot. Now, I'm also going to be running Whisper of Torment. You gain grenade energy each time you take damage from targets. So this is really, really good. You're always going to be taking damage at all times in PvE, so you're always getting grenade energy back to throw more stasis turrets. Now, finally, I'm going to be running Whisper of Conduction. Nearby stasis shards track to your position, and you get 10 resilience and 10 intellect. The 10 resilience is honestly very good now with resilience changes to give you damage reduction, but this is going to make all those stasis shards you make with Glacier Harvest just track to you, and it is very, very good for, again, applying some of those mods. Now, before we jump into the mods, I do like to run a 100 resilience, 100 discipline combo. 100 resilience is obviously very good for damage reduction, and you freeze and everything, so things aren't going to be shooting at you that much anyway. I do try to get as much recovery as possible, and then 100 resilience is obviously nice, so you can throw as many turrets out as possible, or just normal Cold Snap grenades. But now, getting into the mods, I actually am going to make 2 recommendations. The first one is based all around spamming as much grenades as possible, and the other one is about doing a lot of damage. Now, the main mod of this is going to be elemental shards. So stasis shards count as stasis elemental wells for you. So this is going to be really, really good because Glacier Harvest is making those shards. Then Whisper Conduction is tracking those shards to you, and then that means you're going to always be able to pick up your shards all the time, which also counts as elemental wells. Now, this means a couple different things. Not only can this play into mods, but since it is an elemental well, that also is going to allow it to give you great energy back, since it is pairing with your stasis subclass. So not only are you getting melee energy now, you're also getting grenade energy, which is really, really nice. Now, another mod to pair with this is elemental shards. So I'm going to become charge light when I pick up an elemental well that matches my subclass type. Since I'm making stasis shards literally 24/7 with this build, I am always going to be picking them up, and I'm always going to be charger light. This is going to be very, very strong for your other mods in the build, and there's never a downtime where you're not charger light with this build. Now, those 2 mods are going to stay present for both the recommendations, but for this one, I'm honestly just going to be running 3 firepower mods. Now, if you don't know what firepower is, This is while Charger Light, regain a portion of your grenade energy when you use your grenade, consuming 1 stack of Charger Light. You're always going to have 2 stacks of Charger Light, and you have 2 grenades. So that means you're going to take advantage of this mod both times you throw your grenades. Now, the other cool part of this is that this mod effect stacks with other copies of this mod. So if you have 3 of these and you throw a grenade while you charge light, you essentially get half your grenade energy back. That's obviously very good playing into Osmium Gloves, 100 Discipline, things like Whisper of Torment as well. You're going to be getting your grenades back insanely fast, and that is allowing you to have 4 up to 5 stasis turrets. You could possibly get even more depending on the locations you're in, and you could just literally spam these things everywhere and crowd control everything. Now, I do also like to run a bomb burst so I can just get some grenade energy back whenever I throw my rift down, and I also run explosive finisher, so when I finish the enemy, it will actually restore my grenade, but it does kind of 1/5 of your super. The thing is though, the stasis super definitely is okay. It's not the greatest in the game. It's okay for doing some act clear if you need to, but you don't really need that since that's kind of what your whole build's based around anyway. So you could just use the super to make sure you get grenades back, which are arguably more powerful anyway than the stasis super. Now that is the first recommendation. Now let's get into the second one and let's talk about some weapons. Arbalist is obviously very strong for in-game content. You get anti-barrier, can take out every shield, but running things like Aegis Scepter is also really good. It plays into this build extremely nice, that you're going to be freezing enemies all the time anyway, and it is a act clear machine. I do like to run a gun with Demolitionist on it, but if you want to take a gun with adaptive munitions so you can take out any shield in the game, you could do that as well. I just like running Demolitionist so I can spam even more grenades. Then finally, for heavy weapons, obviously taking a linear fusion rifle is strong, and pretty much any of them will work. Taipan, Cataclysmic Storm Chaser, but if you want to take something like the Reed's Regret and maybe even run something like Aegis Scepter and then use the Catalyst to drain your super, since the super doesn't do much anyway, to do some extra boss damage, you can 100% do that. And the mods I would recommend changing out is some of these fire powers. You can change it to something like Phantom Might, and you can change another one to Higher Energy Fire. Now if you want to change the other fire power to something else, you can. It's still going to give you a little bit of grenade energy back, which is nice, but it will actually play into removing some of your high energy fire. So if you want to just change this to something like Font of Wisdom, you could, to make sure you always have your super up with Aegis Scepter, so you can do a lot of act clear or even some extra boss damage if you do run out of ammo with Reed's Regret. Now the reason this is my second recommendation for specifically boss damage is for the fact that obviously Elemental Shards and Elemental Charge, when you pick up a stasis well, you're going to get Charged Light, and it counts as well. So that's going to proc Phantom Might to give you a damage bonus, and it's going to proc Higher Energy Fire to give you a damage bonus. These actually do stack together, and you'll be getting an insane amount of damage for your stasis weapons. So things like Reed's Regret is going to be insanely strong. The role you want on this is for sure triple tap firing line if you can get it. And again, even things like Aegis Scepter, when you have that catalyst proc and it's draining your super, this does put out a decent amount of damage. And on top of that, you're also freezing enemies, which again will spawn Glacier Harvest crystals that will track to you, and you can keep Higher Energy Fire and Phantom Might up 24/7 if you're doing some damage with Aegis Scepter. This alone is already strong enough to keep your grenades up at all times. You don't really need 4 or 5 of the turrets. Obviously it's very fun if you have those, but if you just want to run this instead, just if you're getting into a raid, you don't feel like changing any of your loadouts up, or just even like a GM Nightfall and you can't change your loadout, this is already going to be very good as well. So you don't have to run 3 firepower, but if you like spamming as many grenades as possible, definitely put 3 firepowers on, and you're going to be able to literally freeze entire battlefields. So that's pretty much going to do it for the build. I hope you all enjoyed. I know a lot of you guys on the other stasis build wanted me to make a Osmiomancy based build, and I really hope this lived up to the hype. It's very good for add clear. It's very good for boss damage. You may just have to change your mods out a little bit, or if you just want to run the normal Phantom Might High Energy Fire 24/7, that will also work, and you can just destroy everything with it. If you guys would like to try this build out, I will have a dim link to this build in the description below. And if you guys enjoyed this content and want to see more just like it, consider subscribing, drop a like, and turn those notifications on. Also, if you'd like to join my Discord or follow me on any of my socials, all of that will be linked in the description as well. But I just want you to know that watching this video is way more than enough. And every single bit of support from y'all is truly appreciated. Thank you all so much for watching this one, and have a great day. Peace.